Welcome to this talk about leveling up the Dutch games industry. I am going to see what works here. Yeah. So my name is Dirk de Geus. I am the co-founder and executive chairman of Paladin Studios, which is a company based in The Hague. We are a game developer making games that make you smile. So that's the basic idea. About 40 people. We work with publishers from all over the world. And apart from that, I'm also the chairman of the Dutch Games Association, which is the trade association for the Dutch games industry. We represent all of the game creators in the Netherlands. I'm here to share with you a little bit of information about the games industry in the Netherlands and explain why this is actually a key segment of the creative industry. There's already a lot of momentum in games in the Netherlands, and there's a lot more to come. So let's have a look at what's going on with games. First, a little bit of the boring part, which is the numbers. So if you look at games, and maybe you've heard this before, games are one of the most lucrative businesses in the media and entertainment industry. Looking at games compared to, for example, movies or music, we can see that games are bigger than those segments combined. And not only that, it is also a fast-growing industry. So when you take a look here at the Newzoo numbers, the Dutch or the game industry worldwide is projected to grow 7% per year, year over year. This is a significant growth, and what we also see is that Corona, for example, has had a limited impact on the games industry. You can see a little bump in the Corona year, 2020, and also a small correction in 2021 after the lockdown ended. By the way, when I say this, I can imagine there are some questions. I heard that there is an opportunity to ask some questions in the chat. I have a nice iPad here. If you have any questions, just type them in the chat, and I'll see it pop up here, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. So let's talk about games in general. I think the first key characteristic of games is that they drive innovation, and most importantly, they drive innovation in design and technology. So we see, for example, virtual reality, which is a key technology coming to maturity these days. Although the roots are in simulation and training and that kind of thing, the actual boost of it, where it's taking off, is more related to entertainment games. A lot of design is also being used in games, and one of the key characteristics of game design is that you're always looking for something new. So while we're working with existing paradigms and best practices, there's a lot of sort of innovation and improvements happening with each game. If you don't bring anything new, then it's a showstopper. So this is where games really are pushing the envelope for design in general. Games are a combination of entertainment, technology, design, but there's a lot of jobs that go into making a game. So whether it's artists, like what you see here, or product managers, or marketeers, or translators, there's a lot of really high quality job opportunities that come from the game industry. And the growth of the games industry also directly correlates with growth of employment opportunities. There is a strong focus on export in games. So especially games made in the Netherlands, Netherlands being a small market, we are focusing a lot on exporting games to worldwide markets, whether it's Asia, United States, any market that you can imagine. The rise of digital platforms has accelerated that export focus, and it is something that I think, from the top of my head, I would say probably 99% of the games are being exported compared to games from the Netherlands being played in the Netherlands. So this is a very strong pillar for economic reasons, and also it creates an opportunity to collaborate and work on a global scale from a very tiny country. Then what's also good to know, and I think maybe it flies under the radar of a lot of people that do not play games, is that there is a really, really big audience. In the Netherlands alone, more than 8 million people play games, and that, of course, has an impact. The cultural impact of it is significant. Whether it's the massive successes like Fortnite or Pokemon Go, or games like Candy Crush, which are a little bit more, they're huge, but they're a little bit more limited in cultural impact. People that play these games, they are shaped by these experiences. And for example, funny thing is, when Apple banned Fortnite, for example, from the App Store, people that played Fortnite on the App Store were suddenly socially isolated in a way, because their friends were playing Fortnite and now they couldn't play it anymore. So these games have impact beyond just the game itself. There are social connections being created, and players will be shaped by the experiences. Furthermore, the games market is corona-proof, and what we saw in 2020 when the lockdowns began, is that the people that were sort of unfortunately trapped in their homes in a way, they used games as a way to connect to friends and family, to basically have some sort of nice experience, right? Even though you're in a small room, you can still explore virtual worlds. And that has led to an increase in game behavior from players. Furthermore, the industry is relatively corona-proof because we're working with digital products. The capacity of studios to work remotely is quite present. Even though there's some adjustment that needed to be done in the beginning, we know how to do that, and the productivity levels are pretty much the same when working remotely as with working in a studio, roughly. There was a little bit of a bump in the beginning because of the lockdowns, and all of the trade shows, the business-to-business activities fell flat for a couple of months. But fortunately, given that the market has remained strong, all of these B2B activities have recovered, and there's a lot of strong industry activity going on right now. And I'll come back to that in a bit when we look at M&A activity, for example, in the Netherlands. So that is a broad overview of games in general. Let's have a look at games in the Netherlands. So these numbers are dating from 2018, when the last Games Monitor was done. The rough games sector in the Netherlands is about €1 billion, with a split of 500 million euros for, I guess you can call it, the games market. These are publishers that have presence in the Netherlands, but mostly as a publisher, so as a distributor of games, which means that they import games from abroad, let's say the United States or Japan. The games are created there, and players in the Netherlands play these games. That market size is roughly 500 million euros, or was 500 million euros in 2018. Then we have the developers, which is what the Dutch Games Association represents, the creators of games in the Netherlands, based in the Netherlands. Again, mostly this is for export. In 2018, that was roughly 300 million euros. Then we have suppliers and other associated companies. You can think of companies like translation services or data analysis or marketing support, technological support, server infrastructure, these kind of companies. They represent about 200 million euros in size. This is data from 2018. Of course, that's a while back. The plan is to start new research next year, so please stay tuned for that. And we hope to have this pie chart updated soon. Then a little bit about the ecosystem. So we have a pretty complex ecosystem. This is a really brutal simplification of it. Roughly speaking, you have the industry, which consists of the developers, the studios that make the games, individual creators. These could be freelancers, audio engineers, or artists that work independently, and the publishers. The reason we also take the publishers in as core of the industry here is because a lot of studios in the Netherlands are self-publishing, and there's also a handful of publishers headquartered in the Netherlands that also serve as a sort of an export focus. Then we have the next layer, contributors, which is education and research. These are segments of the industry or the ecosystem that really tie in closely to the industry, the creators. Education, of course, provides the talent that we need to make the games. Research institutions have very strong ties with serious game companies and are needed for groundbreaking technological innovations and other aspects. So these are strong collaborations. Then the next layer is the enablers. We have investors and all kinds of industries, semi-industry, media, for example, trade shows. This is where we broaden the scope a little bit. These people usually serve the industry, the creators of games. Then the channels, obviously, we need to get the games out there, but there's also influencers that play games that provide marketing for game companies. There's esports teams, players that are really focusing on the actual sport element of the games that they play. Even though these are very tightly correlated with the game industry itself, it's not necessarily part of the core industry because they don't make the games. However, definitely part of the ecosystem and something that we all need for success. And then there's the players, the government, other organizations, the viewers of these YouTube videos. There's a whole range of companies and individuals that are impacted by games. All right, I won't go through the whole list, but I wanted to show this slide of notable companies because it shows the range of companies and also a little bit of the top, the top 10 or top 8, 7 of the game studios according to the people they employ. There's a handful of really big companies that are wildly successful and that are really internationally renowned. Guerrilla Games is maybe the most well-known of them, bought by Sony and creator of AAA games like Horizon Zero Dawn. Truly a remarkable company. Worldwide, they are renowned for the quality of their games, but also for the innovation and the message that they put behind their games. Growing very fast as well, and based in Amsterdam. Then Azerion, right at the top, is the biggest company in this list. It's not just a games company, but a media and entertainment company. They have several game studios under their wing, and they are also They've also bought a couple of studios in the Netherlands, such as Spill Games. The third one on the list is Vertigo in Rotterdam, a very successful virtual reality company. They created a very popular VR game and have ties with some of the hardware makers of virtual reality headsets, very strong ties. And they've been bought by Koch Media, which is a German company. So now they are growing very fast, and they have a bright future ahead of them, leading the charge in the virtual reality movement. These are just, this is the top three. These other companies are also really interesting, impressive. Nixus got bought by Sony recently, as an example, and all of these game companies, they have had tremendous growth behind them and a bright future ahead. So that's the entertainment side. Another very interesting aspect about the Dutch game industry is that there's a lot of applied game studios. I made a small list of some of the top studios. You can see that the companies here are maybe not as big as some of the entertainment studios, but still they have a tremendous impact. At the top of the list is Tover in Utrecht. This is a spin-off of another company, a game company, combined with a research project, I guess you can say. And they created a healthcare solution for elderly people with Alzheimer's. So a very innovative product that uses games and playfulness to relieve some of the stress of people that have Alzheimer's, and it really supports the healthcare ecosystem by providing, I guess you can call it entertainment for this target audience. They've built this product, validated it, and now it's used all over the world. Truly a beautiful success story and something to be proud of as the Netherlands. The other, I think this is the only one I'm going to highlight. The other companies are really strong in providing services for serious companies or actual normal companies and governments to use games for serious purposes. So this could be training, education, simulators, visualizations, anything that is not entertainment. They have experts on board where they provide not just the game design and development, but also in the case of training, they have educational experts. They have psychologists in some cases. So these are very special companies because if you look at the Netherlands compared to the world, then the Netherlands is quite strong in this segment, and we are definitely pioneering this aspect of the game industry. So something to keep an eye on. Then we have the Dutch indies. The Netherlands is actually known a lot for these individual creators. We've through some very good educational programs, we've birthed some very high-profile game creators. Listed here is, for example, Adriaan de Jong, who has tremendous success with his games. For example, Hidden Folks, working with Apple, winning all kinds of awards. Rami Ismail and Jan Willem Nijman from Vlambeer come to mind, and also shown here. This is a typical, I would say it's a typical Dutch spirit, right? These creative people take on an impossible task. They set out to create a game pretty much by themselves. Creating a game is extremely difficult. Creating a successful game is even more difficult. Usually it takes a team of 10, 20, 200, 2,000 people to create a big title. But these people are multi-talented and they can do it themselves. They can do the programming, the design, and they found the freedom and claimed the freedom to, just get down to it and build what they have in their heads without any constraints of, does this fit with a certain market, or does it fit a certain trend or genre? And the result is very innovative games that are, in these cases, very, very successful. Something to be proud of, for sure. The next topic is the M&A activity. So we've seen a couple of pillars of the Dutch game industry, a couple of studios. A lot of the sort of the maturity that we see now is sort of evidenced by the companies that exited. They sold majority shares to mostly international companies. For example, 2017, Triumph Studios sold to Paradox in Sweden. Sparkling Society sold to a Dutch investment firm. Spill Games sold to Azerion. Vertigo Games sold to Koch Media in Germany. And then in 2021, we see not one company, but in 3 companies being sold. So there's this accelerating effect. And the reason why this is accelerating is because there is an increased number of companies that are mature enough to be interesting for multinational organizations. This is a really good sign. It points to the fact that the Netherlands is on the map internationally with these multinational organizations. And it means for the Netherlands that there is an increase in funding, in resources to grow these organizations in the Netherlands. Make no mistake, even though these companies are now owned by, for example, Vertigo may be owned by a German company, that doesn't mean that the money is now going to Germany. It means that Germany is also investing in Vertigo Games and that gives them the ability to grow the team even further. So, for example, Forcefield, which is a company in Amsterdam also doing VR games, they have been bought by Vertigo Games. So there's this virtuous cycle happening where these exits just strengthen the whole industry. Also, what I want to point out, you cannot see it on this slide, but in the last couple of years, we've seen these M&A activities happening. Before 2017, there wasn't a lot going on. So there's a big empty space before this timeline where, maybe the only one that comes to mind right now for me is Guerrilla Games being bought by Sony. Maybe I'm probably missing something, but this is a very incidental event. So it's very encouraging to see that this is now a regular occurrence in the Netherlands. My hope is that the entrepreneurs that have founded these companies and that have also exited and gone through this whole process, that they will help new entrepreneurs, startups, to get into games, maybe through angel investments or coaching or mentoring, but also help them across to get to this exit point or to get to this maturity stage. And already we can see some signs that that is happening. So it's very, very good. The other thing we're seeing is that the Netherlands happens to be an excellent location for multinational companies. So Amsterdam is world famous. It is relatively easy to attract talent towards Amsterdam because it has a high quality of life. It's a good city to be in. And of course, this resonates throughout the Netherlands, right? It's not just Amsterdam. But for these multinational companies, they see the Netherlands as a good launch pad for Europe in many cases. especially with Brexit happening and the geographic location of the Netherlands. We're right in the middle of it all, right? We are right in between, the big countries and areas like Scandinavia, Germany, France, UK. So it's a very central location to have offices, and that attracts these companies. A typical organization might set up shop here. They will start hiring, so it means that there's talent coming in, there's money coming in. This is again a virtuous cycle, because if people internationally, if the talent internationally knows that there is a healthy, rock-solid game industry in the Netherlands, then the talent is more easily convinced to come over here, to move their families here. So this is really important for the future. And so far, the past couple of years, we've seen a big increase in companies that settle down here. And of course, there is a strong ecosystem. So I listed a whole bunch of companies here and organizations that support the ecosystem and support the industry. Some of these, like Blender or i3D or Utomic Gamei, these are more technology companies providing tools for game developers to make games. It is really positive that worldwide tools such as Blender is actually comes from the Netherlands, born in the Netherlands. It's a really good thing. Beyond technology, there's companies like Meet to Match or Dutch Game Garden that are tremendous forces in the business side. So Meet to Match, for example, is a matchmaking system that I don't know about the actual market penetration that they have, but my impression is that more than half of the game conferences worldwide use Meet to Match these days for setting up meetings between publishers and developers or investors and game studios. And that is a powerful company to have located in the Netherlands. Dutch Game Garden being one of the incubators in the Netherlands, very strong presence, have been around for a long time, and it means that they are recognized in the world as one of the pioneering incubators, attracting the attention of international publishers, investors, and of course the studios in the Netherlands. The Dutch Games Association, obviously a very, very important aspect of the Dutch game industry. Not saying that because I'm the chairman, but I'm saying it because this is a non-profit that basically gathers the developers as associates. It's an association, vereniging in the Netherlands. And this group of developers understand that together we can do better things. We can tackle topics that we cannot tackle alone. And the organization is growing, it's strengthening, and I can see that it becomes more and more significant in the future. Also gathering the support of these developers. The Midgame Fund is another one I would like to highlight. It is the first sign, I think, of this cycle of investors and entrepreneurs sort of feeding back into itself, creating this virtuous loop. Midgame Fund is a collective of, I guess you can call it seasoned entrepreneurs, game founders that have achieved a measure of success, and they come together in a collective to invest in game projects from the Netherlands. So it's Dutch only, focused on the Netherlands 100%, and it basically provides young developers with an option for funding beyond going to international publishers or what have you not, investors or whatever. So it's a really nice addition, and it focuses on small angel type investments, 50 to 100,000 euros. And it's a project-based investment, so the founders do not lose any equity or shares in their company. It really is on a project basis, which is for this type of developer, for the indie developer, it's for many indies, it's exactly what they need. Then Newzoo, also an internationally renowned company providing data and analytics on the worldwide game industry. I already showed some of their insights in the previous slide, and they are the #1 data provider for the game industry worldwide. Of course, also this is really good to have in the Netherlands. All right, so let's have a closer look at the industry and let's do a SWOT analysis. So some of the strengths of the industry, first of all, there's a whole bunch of entrepreneurs that they're going for it, right? The energy that they bring in and that they put into their companies is really great to see. They're also innovating on all fronts, designing fresh ideas for games, just trying things, trying new things. And that is a very key part of what the Netherlands is all about and what the game industry in the Netherlands is all about. Then the mid-sized studios seeing these successes, the M&A activity, the strong community that we see. I'm very happy that today we have the Dutch Game Awards. There's 180, probably even more people coming in to celebrate the best games and the best initiatives in the industry today. And I think that is, it feels, for me, it feels like a family, and that community is a key to success, as we've also seen in countries like Finland, where that has been a really strong driver for their growth. Serious games is another pillar that we are a front runner in internationally, and personally, I especially see an opportunity in serious games companies turning from service, bespoke custom development, and changing the business model to products, because with products we can serve the whole world. I think Tover, again, is a beautiful example of this, where suddenly it's not just the Netherlands and the organizations in the Netherlands that is your market, but suddenly the world is the market, and you can export your product to any country and any organization that needs it. Last point is an interesting one. I'm charging it a little bit. The industry is quite strong already, even without significant government support. Of course, there is government support, make no mistake. Programs ranging from R&D, programs like VBSO, to support in the Holland Pavilion. Creative Holland is quite active with this. This is great. However, if we look at neighboring countries such as Germany, then there's tens of millions, over 50 million euros being poured into game development. So that is a different order of magnitude, and that's what we're competing with in the Netherlands as well. So we're strong, we're growing, even though the countries around us are sort of cheating their way with all these tax cuts and everything. So that's a good thing. Imagine what we can do with government support, right? Then a couple of weaknesses. It's not all, not all great. We have some challenges here as well. A lot of the companies in the Netherlands have a mentality of bootstrapping. I'm guilty of that as well, where we don't want investors saying what we should do or not do. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but it limits the business model. Typically, the companies that are bootstrapped, that do not have external funding, they are service-oriented. Because if there's a client that can provide some of the funding or some of the money, then you do not need an external investor, which is great, but it also limits you to that specific business model, and it slows down growth. So I think one of the opportunities that we have is to recalibrate our mindset a little bit as entrepreneurs and start to accept and pursue investments a little bit more. Another one is that even though the Netherlands is a very small country, there used to be a bit of a regional battle going on. And that is still a little bit of a thing where some companies, for example, they are still very much focused on their own stuff, whether it's in survival mode or whether it's just the day-to-day. They do not necessarily see the importance of the community on a national level. I see the change. I see that there's a shift happening, but still some of the companies, even some of the bigger ones, are not on board yet. They're still just focusing on let's make great games and let's do our own thing. Then last weakness is that there's a lot of creative founders, myself included. Again, I know exactly what I'm talking about here. I'm an art school dropout. I started my studio when I dropped out of art school. And of course, I had very little business knowledge. This can be remedied, but it takes a long time. And in the end, what we need is some sort of network or support system in place, some education or matchmaking with business-minded people, because it's a skill gap, right? If you start a game studio, you become an entrepreneur, you become a CEO, and that is different than becoming a game maker, unless you're an indie, in which case it's the same thing. But if you want to grow the studio, then yes, you will need to learn things and to approach things in a slightly different way. Then the opportunities and threats. There's a huge opportunity for new business models and platforms. Looking at virtual reality, for example, where Vertigo Games has jumped into that with tremendous success as a result. But also subscription platforms like Apple Arcade. Netflix is starting up their own subscription thing. These Game Pass and there's a lot of these around. It is a new trend in the game industry, meaning that the demand for games will be tailored to these new developments, whether it's technological or business model. Free-to-play, of course, as a very important business model that popped up in the last couple of years. These things, if we embrace them, if we make use of them, then yeah, there are a lot of opportunities out there. I already mentioned the mid-game fund. The second opportunity is that the entrepreneurs that are successful, that they start to reinvest in Dutch game studios and game founders, game startups. This closes the loop, and I also hope that we have this very, very early startup indie scene covered. My hope is that soon we'll have seed funds available for companies that want to have investments in the company, and also scale-up funding at some point where bigger funds will be needed. All of these tie in together, and combined they create a healthy ecosystem, and this will supercharge the growth of the game industry. Already mentioned this third point, the Netherlands positioning in a geographical way. We're just very well positioned for international companies to come here. Somebody mentioned that the English proficiency in the Netherlands is actually #1 in the world, of course, excepting native English speaking countries. That means that communication is relatively easy, and it's these little things: high quality of life, good place to raise your kids, access to talent, good geographical location. We have a lot of things going for us. We shouldn't underestimate that, and we can really benefit from it if we want to grow. Last but not least, we do live in uncertain times. Game industry has proven to be corona-proof to a certain degree, to a high degree, and no matter what happens, we know that this industry will, continue even if there's new lockdowns or new waves or all of the horror scenarios that might happen. Hopefully not. Then let's have a look at the threats. One of the things that we can see, or that I can observe today, is a lack of investors. There's not a lot of game companies that are hot with VCs abroad. It's not like when I talk to a VC, they're going to say, "Oh, the Netherlands, yeah, I have made a couple of investments there. Good ecosystem, good industry. These guys, this is a really great position. If you bet on the Netherlands, you're going to win." They do say that about Finland, right? So we have some catching up to do, and that's okay. We'll get there. But this is a threat, and we might be left behind if we don't get to that point. A lot of companies rely on the development services model. The scalability of that is very questionable, and it is a threat in the sense that if we keep relying on that, then we're not going to see the full potential of the game industry. So I hope that serious game companies, but also entertainment game service companies, that they will be able to make the switch to products at some point, or a hybrid model or whatever. The third point on the threats is basically bootstrapping indie. That's the hot thing. That's the cool thing to do. It does mean high risks, and even if an indie is successful, the success will not necessarily be sustainable or spread out through the industry. It doesn't create new jobs, for example. So this is something where, even though it's definitely a valid angle for those who are called to it, I think as an industry it would be good to have a mindset of creating and supporting the investability of companies in a way. So if you're investor ready, then you're creating something that has value for the long term, and that is ultimately going to be the biggest impact for the industry as a whole. And the last threat, already touched on that, is the government support is lacking. If we compare it to our neighboring countries, or countries like Canada or United States or UK, Germany, Finland, all of these countries have tax cuts or soft landing programs. They literally throw money at game studios. We don't have that in the Netherlands, and I think if we keep going like that, then the competitive advantage is just going to be very tricky moving forward. All right, so all of that said, there's a lot of opportunities. We have strengths. Where can we take it? The Dutch Games Association, we've set a, vision for the future. In 2030, we intend to have a net export of games, which basically means that the pie chart you saw earlier, where there's 300 million of revenue generated by creating games and exporting them to international territories, 500 million of international games being imported into the Netherlands. The intention is to flip that balance in favor of the game creators in the Netherlands, so that we export more than we import. We've also seen a 7% year-on-year growth rate, and I did a little bit of intuitive mathematics, and I hope that the new research will support that soon to get the full picture. But roughly, you can say roughly that we would need to have 1.1 billion euros in revenue at the very least. And I think it's good to set a target at 1.25 billion euros. Is that possible? Yes, it is possible. We would need to grow faster than the international game industry. Given the potential, given the untapped potential mostly of the Dutch game industry, I think we might succeed in that and maybe even go beyond that. So this is the goal. And of course, what we need to get there, a couple of things. First thing is a healthy industry. Of course, a strong industry association to represent the companies. We know that the government wants to talk to an organization like the DGA to start these conversations, but also having a good association will improve the community. It will have a better, how do you say it? We'll have a better positioning. We'll have a better sense of this is where we stand and what we stand for. And also it will help with branding and reputation of the Dutch industry. When I talk to the big studios, then there's one thing that comes up always, and that is hiring, attracting talent, international talent, keeping the international talent, making sure that there's no brain drain. This is not something that these companies can do alone, even though they try. We need to do that as a country, as an industry as a whole, because ultimately that will attract the talent. If you know, if I'm in the States and I have a family there, and I consider to move to the Netherlands, then I want to know that there's a strong industry, that if I lose my job at this specific company, that I can still have another company to go to, and that I don't need to uproot my family again and move to another country. This is very important. Same thing for investors, having a strong community. I think Finland has specifically shown that this is a key to success, and it's such a powerful force for having successful games and successful game companies. Investors know it. They will look towards that, and they will. It is an acceleration of. It's sort of a magnetizing effect. Third point is education and training and matchmaking. So the founders, the game studio founders, getting their business skills up to par, making sure that they write a business plan, making sure that they have the mindset of building a studio instead of building a game. And again, this is not for everybody, but for those game founders that want to build a studio, it takes a different skill set, and this is important to establish. I think personally that this is where the incubators, such as the Dutch Game Garden, can provide a big benefit, and also collaboration with business education, business schools could be a good idea. Established studios that attracted top talent, right? Whether they come from abroad or whether we're growing them in-house, studios like Guerrilla, like Vertigo, that just is a magnet for all of these amazing creative people and technical people and business people that can make a big difference. Last but not least, let's continue all of the M&A activities. I hope that will keep the Netherlands on the radar for the multinationals and the investors. All of this will really create a strong foundation. But it's not just the industry. We also need a healthy ecosystem. I already mentioned the incubators, the business support organizations, the educational institutions. We need alignment there, and we need to make sure that everything matches and that everything fits together like this big puzzle. We need funds. We need investments for all stages, starting from the early seed financing all the way up to the scale up and maybe even IPO type activities. We need different types of investments. We need project-based investments. We need company-based investments. We need investors that are investing in serious games. We need investors in entertainment games. We're at the very early stage of this whole sort of ecosystem to arise. It's coming, but we need it to be successful. Up-to-date industry data, very important. The Games Monitor is an excellent vehicle for that, and the intention is to form a broader consortium, for example, to get esports on board, to get the game market in the Netherlands on board through the Video Game Federation Netherlands, and to collaborate and see what the full ecosystem looks like. Education as well, by the way. That can really bring more understanding to government, to the public, of what this part of the creative industry is all about. And last but not least, education, making sure that the upcoming talent, that they have the right tools, the right skills to flow into the industry and become productive and happy. Then last but not least, obviously the government support. My wish or hope is that we can bring the Netherlands up to par with our neighbors. Practically, that means that there needs to be some programs like match funding or tax breaks or whatever. Could be trade missions, could be all kinds of things. This is on an economic level, but also for the cultural side of things, the indies, it's important that there's project-based funding. Now, this is already there. Stimuleringsfonds is doing a great job with that. My hope is that this can be continued or increased in the future. Second point is very important. When I talk to big companies that consider the Netherlands, they look at a lot of different factors. The Netherlands always is on their list, but there's not a very clear and strong national soft landing program that I can point them to and say like, oh, well, if you come here, we'll treat you well, and there's going to be a significant bonus for you. That means sometimes they say, okay, well, even if there's nothing available, we're still going to land in the Netherlands, which is great. It also shows the strength of the Netherlands. But in other cases, they decide to go to Portugal or Germany or Finland or wherever. And last but not least, the internationalization efforts, the branding of the Netherlands. Including games there is important, and we need to keep doing Holland pavilions worldwide. We need to keep doing trade missions. We need to make sure that we keep popping up on the radar as a good place for games. Because if we don't do that, then the talent will not come, the investors will not come, and we're going to lag behind, which is not what we want, obviously. So, a call to action. This is where I address the nation, right? For developers, keep making those awesome games. This is super important. Build the game studios, keep doing what you're doing because it works. Also, please join the Dutch Games Association, because if we have more members, then we can do even more. Talking to the government, setting up events like the Dutch Game Awards, going on trade missions, going on Holland Pavilion trade shows, etc. Join and contribute in some way, whatever you can. For investors, know that good stuff is happening here in the Netherlands in the games industry. So it is a good time to get to know the companies here, to do some research, talk to the incubators, talk to the Dutch Games Association. You might be surprised at what you find. I think it's an untapped gold mine, to be honest, because there's not a lot of visibility yet, even though there's some early indications of that. And for the government, let's get the game industry on the radar, or keep it on the radar. And there's some good momentum going on. So let's set up the right programs and efforts to improve even more. And that is what I have. Thank you very much. I would take questions. I've seen no questions yet, so I think we can wrap this up. Thank you.